Hmm. Hi, Virgo. I want to start by saying something before we go anywhere else. Because when I tuned into your energy today, the first thing I felt wasn't excitement, it wasn't drama, it was something quieter than that. Something that felt almost like vindication mixed with exhaustion. Like someone who has been saying for a long time that something wasn't right and is about to find out they were correct the whole time. And I think you already know on some level that things have been happening that you haven't had full visibility into. I think your gut has been telling you that for a while. Maybe you've been second guessing it. Maybe people around you have made you feel like you were being paranoid or oversensitive or reading too much into things. You weren't. Give me a second here because I want to be careful about how I deliver this. Because shocking news and things happening behind your back sounds dramatic. And some of what I'm going to talk about today is genuinely significant. But I don't want this to land as fear or anxiety. I want it to land as clarity. Because clarity, even when what it reveals is uncomfortable, is always better than the fog you've been navigating. So let's get into it. The first thing I feel when I sit with your energy is a deception, not necessarily a dramatic betrayal, but someone in your world who has not been fully honest with you, someone who has been presenting one version of themselves or one version of events to your face while something different has been operating in the background. And I want to be specific about what kind of deception this feels like because there are different kinds and they require different responses. What I'm feeling isn't someone who has been maliciously plotting against you in some coordinated way. It's more like someone who has been managing information, choosing what to tell you and what not to tell you. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because telling you the full truth would have complicated something for them, would have required them to have a conversation they weren't ready for or weren't willing to have. So instead, they edited, curated, gave you the version of things that kept the peace and kept them comfortable. The problem with that is you've been making decisions based on incomplete information. You've been relating to this person based on who they presented themselves to be rather than who they actually are. And there's a cost to that. Even when you can't quite name what's wrong, you feel the wrongness of it in small moments that don't quite add up, in a nagging sense that the picture you've been given has gaps in it. Those gaps are real, and what's coming is the filling in of them. Let me talk about what specifically has been happening behind your back because I feel it and I want to try to describe it as clearly as I can. There have been conversations about you that you were not part of, not one conversation, a pattern of conversations. Someone has been talking about your situation, your choices, your relationships, possibly even your vulnerabilities to people who are either in your circle or adjacent to it. And the talking has not been coming from a place of genuine concern for you. It's been coming from a place of positioning, of someone managing how they appear relative to you, of someone making sure their narrative about the situation is the one that lands first. That's what I feel most specifically. A narrative being managed, a story being told about you in spaces where you don't have a voice, and the story is not entirely false. The most effective deceptions never are. It's true enough to be believable and curated enough to serve the person telling it. Now, I want to say something important here. The fact that this has been happening is not a reflection of your worth or your discernment. Genuinely skilled operators at this kind of thing are skilled precisely because they don't look like what they are. They look like allies. They look like people who have your interests at heart. That's the whole mechanism of how this works. The fact that you didn't see it fully until now doesn't mean you were naive. It means you were trusting someone who didn't deserve the trust you gave them. There's a second thing happening behind your back that has a completely different quality, and I want to make sure I address both because they're distinct. While one person has been operating in a way that doesn't serve you, another person has been doing something that very much does serve you, but quietly. Someone in your world has been advocating for you, speaking well of you in spaces where it matters, putting your name forward for something, or simply being a quiet, consistent, behind the scenes presence that has been working in your favor without announcing itself. You probably don't know who this is, or if you have a sense of who it might be, you've probably discounted it because this person doesn't make a big show of caring about you. They just quietly do it. Both things have been happening at the same time. Someone working against your interests and someone working for them. And one of the shocking things about what's coming is that you're going to get clarity on both fronts simultaneously. The one who has been undermining you is going to become visible, and the one who has been supporting you is going to step forward in a way that makes their investment in you undeniable. That's actually a profound thing. To see both the betrayal and the loyalty revealed at the same time, it's disorienting, but it's also deeply clarifying about who actually belongs in your life. Let me talk about how this information comes to you, because I think that's actually useful to know. What I feel is not a dramatic confrontation, not a moment where someone sits you down and confesses or where you catch someone in the act of something. It's more gradual than that, more like a series of small pieces of information that arrive from different directions and that start connecting with each other in a way that produces an undeniable picture. Someone says something in passing that doesn't quite fit the story you've been given. You notice something that you've probably noticed before but dismissed. A piece of information arrives from an unexpected source that suddenly makes other things make sense. And then the picture assembles itself almost faster than you're comfortable with, because once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. This is already beginning. Some of the pieces have already landed, and you've been holding them without knowing what they're pieces of yet. What's coming in the near term is the context that makes them cohere. The thing that makes you go, oh, this is what those things were pointing at. And when that oh moment arrives, I want you to trust it. Don't immediately look for the more charitable interpretation. Don't immediately give the benefit of the doubt to the person who has already demonstrated they don't deserve it. Let the picture be what it is. I want to address how you're going to feel when this lands, because I think preparing for that is as important as the information itself. The first thing you're going to feel is probably a version of, I knew it. And that feeling is valid. You've been navigating with incomplete information, and some part of you has known that. The vindication of being right is real, and you're allowed to feel it. But alongside that, there might also be grief. Grief for the version of this person or this relationship or this situation that you thought you had. Because even when what we thought we had turns out to be partly constructed, there was something real in our experience of it that was ours. The investment we made was real, even if what we were investing in wasn't entirely what we believed it to be. Let yourself feel both things, the vindication and the grief. They can coexist. They usually do in moments like this. What I don't want you to do is collapse into bitterness, because bitterness is what happens when we let someone else's betrayal define our relationship with the world, and this person, whoever they are, is not worth that. They're not worth the cost of you closing off in a way that keeps genuine connection from finding you. Feel it, process it. and then let it inform your discernment going forward without letting it calcify into a wall. Here's something that I feel is actually the most important part of this reading, more important than the specifics of what has been happening behind your back. Your instincts are good. They always have been. The fact that something in you has been uncomfortable with this situation, has been sensing that things aren't quite what they seem, has been tracking inconsistencies that you couldn't fully articulate, that sensing was accurate. And I think one of the things this moment is here to do, one of the things this revelation is here to restore, is your trust in your own perception. Because when we're around people who are skilled at managing reality, at presenting things in a certain light, at making us feel like our doubts are our problem, we gradually lose confidence in what we actually see and feel. You might have been second guessing yourself more than usual lately, wondering if you're too suspicious, wondering if you're creating problems that aren't there, telling yourself to give people more benefit of the doubt than they've actually earned. What's coming is going to show you that the doubts were data, that the discomfort was information, that the instinct you kept overriding was right. And once you have that restored confidence in your own perception, you're going to navigate everything differently. You're going to trust yourself more quickly. You're going to let red flags be red flags rather than spending enormous energy explaining them away. You're going to stop working harder to make someone trustworthy than they're working to actually be trustworthy. That shift, that restored self-trust, is actually the most valuable thing that comes out of this whole situation. More valuable than whatever the specific revelation turns out to be. Let me talk about the practical dimension of this, because I don't want to stay in the emotional and psychological territory only. There are real world implications to what's been happening behind your back, and I want to acknowledge those. Depending on your specific situation, what has been happening might have affected things like your reputation in certain circles, your relationships with people who were given the curated version of events rather than the full picture, opportunities that may have been shaped by a narrative you didn't know was running. Some of those things will self-correct when the truth becomes visible. Some of them might require you to take some deliberate action, not defensive action, not going around explaining yourself to everyone, but having honest conversations with the people who matter, letting your actual self be the correction rather than spending energy fighting the distorted version. And some of the people who were given the curated version will come to you once things become clearer. They'll have questions, or they'll just quietly shift in how they relate to you because they'll have new information that changes the picture. Let that process happen at its own pace. You don't have to rush it or manage it. Truth has its own momentum when it's allowed to move. There's one more thing I want to say before I close this reading, and I've been sitting with whether to say it, but I think I should. Not everything that has been happening behind your back is negative. I said earlier that someone has been advocating for you quietly, but there's more than that. There are people in your world who have been noticing your growth, noticing the quality of who you are, noticing the way you handle things, especially difficult things, with a particular kind of integrity. And they've been talking about that in the good way. Your name is being said in rooms you haven't been invited into yet, in conversations about opportunities, in discussions about who the right person for something is. And your name keeps coming up, not because you've been campaigning for yourself, because the quality of how you show up has been making the case for you without you having to make it yourself. That's also something that's going to become visible. The support and recognition that has been operating in the background is going to step into the light, And when it does, it's going to feel like a counterweight to the difficulty of whatever else is revealed. A reminder that even in the spaces where you couldn't see what was happening, the genuine value of who you are was being recognized by people who actually have the eyes to see it. Virgo, what's coming is a lot. I won't pretend otherwise. A lot of information, a lot of clarity arriving at once, a lot of reassessing of certain relationships and situations. It's going to be a significant period. But on the other side of it, you're going to be standing on much more solid ground than you are right now. Ground you can actually see and trust rather than ground that has had hidden instability underneath it. The shocking part is real, and so is the liberation that comes with it. Trust what you've been sensing. Trust what's about to be confirmed, and trust yourself to navigate what comes after. You've been doing that all along, even when you didn't have all the information, and now you're about to have it.